Hey class, welcome to week 7. Today we're just going to talk a little bit about what the requirements of you are for this next upcoming week and the different projects you're going to be doing, and talk a little bit about what's in the reading as well for this week. So specifically this week you're reading chapter 12 in your textbook, you're watching a Connect video, and then you're going to do a discussion board on some of the things that you're going to read in that textbook and then also in that video. And then lastly, you're submitting the final project. This is your final submission for the big project of the course. This is week 7, so keep in mind there are 8 weeks, so you have next week as well. So I certainly would rather you submit a better project, better submission, than it be turned in right on time. So if you think that you could turn in something a little bit better, but you might just be a day or two late, please just let me know. I definitely want you guys to put forth your best efforts, do the best research you can, and take your time really going over the different types of research designs and what makes sense for the research gap that you discover and that you want to research and that you're interested in. So this is definitely a complex, kind of higher level project. So please keep that in mind while you're doing this, that you guys are far and away doing a more advanced project in this course than perhaps other courses that you've worked on, and these skills will ultimately help you when you get into further courses along your SNHU career academic path, and then certainly when you guys go off and get your master's degrees or more education, knowing how to do a literature review, looking for gaps in the research, just being a critical observer, critical thinker regarding all the research that you're reading and also just news that you take in on a daily, being a critical thinker, critical evaluator of that, and then thinking about how you could actually go into investigating or researching that particular question that you come up with based upon any research that you do, and knowing how to write a good submission. So very clean, with introductions, transition sentences, using headings, subheadings, and then a nice conclusion, and then of course APA style referencing. I mean, all of these are very, very important aspects of psychology and further academic success along your academic path. So just kind of keep that in mind and make sure that you know that this is kind of, I recognize this might be your first introduction to doing a bigger project like this, and certainly it's more to help you learn and grow from this than to be punished. So that being said, try not to stress too much. Do the best you can. You guys have been working towards this all term, and obviously I expect great things from you. I'm not lowering my standards by any means, but I do take it into consideration that I would rather give you guys good feedback so that you can learn from it and take it with you on your next courses, essentially. So that being said, please do your best and take a look at the rubric, take a look at the template, make sure you follow all of those things. It's pretty straightforward. You follow those, if you're doing that, all formatting, then that means that I'm just looking now at your content and I get to evaluate your genius, your creativity, what you put out there as far as the literature review that you've done, and then now the creativity aspect of what kind of a research design that you've come up with to answer your research question based upon the gap in the literature that you found. So if you guys can just stick to the formatting, that makes my job so much easier and so much more fun too. I want to read your papers for the content and just give you guys, feedback or interesting thoughts related to the different aspects that you're kind of coming at. So keep that in mind when you're doing your final project. So that being said, the final project is, yet again, it's a literature review based upon the 5 research articles that you had for the term, 3 of which were given to you based upon the track and then topic that you chose, and then you chose 2 literature articles of your own. You found those via your SNHU library. Hopefully most of you found them, or you could do Google Scholar as well. Just on a side, on a little bit of a tangent here, using Google and from a very broad perspective, a very macro approach to doing research is okay. Like you type in, I don't know, Executive functioning. Type that into Google, see what it spits out. See what are kind of the hot topics going on with that. You can drill down a little bit more, and then you can find that, hey, executive functioning might go with processing speed, with memory. Let me see if now I can go to my academic source, your library, online library, type in now your keywords that you found. You've drilled down, you know what you're researching specifically. You go find those articles. Now, after using those articles, you find maybe 2 or 3 that are good ones, then you use their references. So if you start with an article that's from like 2017, 2016, as earliest as possible, and then you will be seeing that their references will include research articles from 2005 and probably earlier. So, always kind of keep that in mind that that's how research happens. You take your topic and it's very broad, and then you start kind of narrowing it down. And then you're going to use other people's research that they've done to kind of back up your own research. That's a lit review. That's empirically based. It's what other people have found. You are going to restate it as an argument for why your research topic is valid, is legitimate, has purpose, and where there might be some gaps for you to now go into your own research project. So I hope that kind of makes sense, and I hope that you can see that as a very, very useful skill set once you guys, like I said, once you're going into your higher level academic courses and then onto your master's degree. This is going to be a very integral part of being in those kind of levels in an academic world. So like I said, that literature review, how you did all that research, and then now you're moving into the second part of the final project, which is the research design. And you had that research worksheet where you came up with your kind of research gap. You found the gap in the gap in the literature, not research gap, the gap in the literature based upon the 5 articles that you read, something that you thought was glaringly obvious that was missing, and that would also contribute to your understanding of this particular item and how social psychology kind of fits in there and how it can benefit social psychology. You're looking at all of those things, and that's how you found that gap. And now after that, you came up with the gap, then you came up with the research question. The research question is supposed to kind of be addressing that gap in some way. This is the creativity. There's no set way to come up with that question. This is kind of the thing that you are interested in and what you think was kind of glaringly obvious as well. And you're kind of combining and you interwove a lot of things together there to make a really good question. And then after that, you're thinking about the different types of designs that are out there. Experimental, quasi-experimental, correlational, the way that you find the data for all of those. Are going to be doing observations? Are you going to be doing surveying? In addition to that, there's qualitative, which is kind of another animal all of its own, but that's also a useful thing to look into as far as doing research. And then you're supposed to consider the different ethical parameters of each of those types of designs. What things are you going to be concerned about when you do research? And keep in mind, confidentiality is always going to be included with every single design that you do. So make sure that you mention that. Confidentiality, informed consent, making sure that people know what they're getting themselves into. That's pretty much the biggest thing to be concerned about. In addition to that, there's the APA ethics publication out there. If you just go onto apa.org, you can kind of rifle through the ethics, the principles of within psychology and the things we have to be concerned about when we're doing research, and also doing therapy as well. So kind of take a look at those, make sure you know what kind of perspective you're coming at your research design for as far as an ethical concern. And then also, I want to make sure that you guys are editing these projects. Ask a friend to edit it. I know that that's always a little bit brutal to be an editor, so you can offer to buy them some flowers or brunch, or if you're over 21, buy them a 6-pack or a bottle of wine or Coke, whatever. Just offer to treat them to edit your paper. And I guarantee you they will find things that you did not find. On a side note here, I am terrible with editing my own papers. I royally suck. And I have to have somebody else edit my papers. It's just, I don't like reading my own stuff. It's kind of like listening to yourself on tape or on camera. It's just god awful. You don't want to do that. So I require someone else to edit my papers. So there's no shame in that. It's perfectly acceptable. Just make sure that, when you submit your paper, it's highly edited. You're looking for grammar mistakes, making sure it flows, make sure it makes sense. Using subheadings really helps to organize your paper at this level because it is so complex. So essentially, I would go to the template. You have a template within the announcements, so it's accessible for everybody. It's just a Word document, and use the template as you see fit. That means that if you want to copy and paste, that's fine. But I made this template, and I know exactly what my words say, and I know that each section underneath each heading has instructions in it. So make sure that you go in there and you read those instructions, read what each section is about, and make sure you delete the instructions afterwards so that your material goes into there where those instructions used to be. So edit the template, essentially. Make sure that it flows nicely and address each one of the subheadings that is in that template. Essentially, that template is taken right from the rubric that is online for the final project. Every single aspect that you're going to be graded on is within that template. Just pretty concisely, just follow the template as close as you can. Obviously, if you want to have a little bit more creative genius in it and adjust it as necessary, by all means, just try to get every section within your paper as much as possible, and a nice clean reference section as well. That is definitely pretty important to me, to tell you the truth. Organization of the paper, helping it flow, using subheadings, it just makes a clear, nicely defined research paper, and it's easy for your reader to kind of understand what you're saying. Okay, so just briefly here, I just want to touch base a little bit with Chapter 12, helping, and kind of what that chapter is all about. Like I said, you are doing a discussion board activity on this chapter. So essentially, helping involves this notion of altruism. And altruism is essentially doing something for others without regard to yourself. And that can be all sorts of different levels as far as regard to yourself, regard to your financial ability, personal safety, just what's in your best interest in the moment. I mean, just going out of your way to help another person. It's pretty basic, but there are some different theories that try to explain altruism and what it's all about. So you've got your social exchange theory, which is psychological in nature, and this is where humans try to maximize their rewards and minimize the cost in any type of human interaction. So essentially, you're going to be making these little subtle calculations on the daily with any opportunity there is to be pro-social. So you see something happening instantaneously without even really your awareness. You weigh the pros and cons. A lot of the times, it's going to be subjective based upon what motivates you more in that moment and for that particular pro-social behavior. Are you more intrinsically motivated by not wanting to feel guilty, and because it makes you feel good to actually go and help this person in whatever the situation is? And the situation is going to kind of play an impact on that as well. Or are you more extrinsically motivated in that moment? Like, do you need a donation? Someone will give you money to be helpful. Now, the extrinsic motivation kind of takes away a little bit from this purely altruistic behavior, but social exchange theory kind of includes that as well, just as far as what motivates you to be helping. So a good example is donating blood. So you weigh the pros and cons of what do you have to do to give blood and what are you going to get in return for it. So it's uncomfortable, it makes you feel nauseous, those are kind of the negatives, but in return you're going to feel good about doing this behavior. In addition, you might get some free cookies, and you won't have any guilt about it. So that being said, we have these rewards, so these internal rewards, and guilt is is definitely a motivator, and the reduction of guilt. We don't want to feel guilty for things, so that makes us be a little bit more altruistic at times. And just giving in general too. Some people have kind of ascended to that self-actualized level where they just purely want to give. In addition, this whole notion of social norms, that's another theory that tries to explain altruism, and this is social in nature. This is based upon like this notion of a reciprocity norm, where we expect people who have helped us to help us again. Additionally, there's a social responsibility aspect. We look at our community, our society, and we expect our people to help. And so by expecting it, we end up doing it. So this kind of reciprocal nature. And then lastly, there's an evolutionary based explanation that kind of goes into evolutionary psychology a little bit too, so this is biologically enhanced essentially. So mostly with that one, it's an evolutionary thing for why did we survive as a species? Why do we need to be social with each other? Why do we need to help each other? And that makes all the difference in the world. If we do so, it means that our species will survive. Another aspect in that chapter that you're learning about is empathy. Essentially, these are vicarious experiences, and you're really trying to understand another's feelings and put yourself in somebody else's place, in their shoes, and try to understand what they're going through. And a question here is, how do you think empathy impacts an altruistic behavior? So kind of chew on that a little bit. Next in the chapter, you go over a few things about when you help. There's always a decision tree, right, when we do things. And this goes into helping you make the call of whether you're going to or not. Again, those are the subtle weighing of the pros and cons, but it definitely impacts the people around you with what they do as well. So for example, the bystander effect is definitely an aspect that needs to be considered here of assuming that somebody else has called, and so you just keep on going. So we also tend to help when we notice that others are doing it, other people are doing a behavior. And that one is always, I've always wondered why. Why is that? Is it related to self-protection? Hey, we witnessed somebody else going up to this person. Obviously, it must be safe. Is it a social thing? We're just biologically programmed to be social and go and help this other person who's helping this other person. Is it our egos telling us to get some sort of recognition for helping? Maybe there's an opportunity to get a benefit out of this. Someone will give us a pat on the back for helping. Or is it just popular? There's a lot of different reasons why do we go and help when other people are helping. Also, we tend to help when we have a little bit of extra time. We help when there's some similarity in the situation, when someone looks similar to us, or if maybe they drive the same car as us, or there's just something subconscious about a recognition factor. We tend to help them more than somebody who's very different than us. And then who do we tend to help? Again, this goes into a little bit of the similarity as well. But there are personality trait factors that go into the person who chooses to help and the people we choose to help as well. So specifically, those who are more conscientious, more thoughtful, have more empathy, a little bit more kindness and selflessness are the personality traits that go into the factor into the person who is willing to go help. Additionally, it seems like men are more likely to help in physical situations, but women have a tendency to help in giving their time and financial donations as well. So ultimately, the last part of the chapter goes into how you increase helping behaviors, helpfulness, altruism. And you can increase accountability and responsibility. Overall, in general, that's kind of what you're wanting to do as a society in your small communities, large communities. You want to increase this accountability to your fellow man. This is where if you do see somebody that needs help, don't think twice. It's an automatic. It's been such a reinforced behavior to go over and see if that person's okay that it's just an automatic thing. Also, you can teach altruism in schools. This whole notion of moral inclusion. So it's who do you put into your circle when you're concerned about them? So you teach moral inclusion versus moral exclusion. so that you prevent more of this prejudicial behavior to go on. And this is being taught, in schools. And this goes back to social learning behaviors by Bandura, the Bobo doll experiment. Essentially, if altruism gets modeled, children will tend to do that same behavior. So if you as an adult, as a parent, as a teacher, end up modeling altruism, the children or the young folks that are watching you will probably end up doing it as well. They'll reciprocate that behavior. So social learning is definitely a very powerful theory in psychology in general, as well as social psychology. So I think that's one thing that definitely applies to that as well. Then just trying to encourage your community to get involved in pro-social behaviors, and then this notion of civic duties. I think that's another aspect that you can also apply to educational formats as well. So that is kind of your overview of Chapter 12, all about helping. Please, again, like I said, do the discussion board based upon Chapter 12 and the video, and your final project is also due as well. Please email me if you have any questions, and you guys have a great week. See you soon. Bye.